And now a little story from the Appleseed.
I was doing a storytelling festival in Ojai, California. And Ojai, if you don't know, is about 13 miles inland from Ventura Beach, sits about 800 feet up above sea level. If you do know, don't contradict me. I was staying in a little cabin, and behind my cabin there were several thousand acres of land that a local nature conservancy had purchased. And I got up one morning and decided to take a hike. And when I got to the parking area, there was a notice board. And in the middle of that notice board, there was an 8x10 computer printout with a color picture of a very ferocious-looking mountain lion on it. And the sign said, "Warning, mountain lions have been spotted in this area." Well, I am from Charleston, West Virginia. We do not have a lot of mountain lions in Charleston, West Virginia. So I took this more as a precursor to an adventure than an actual warning. And the sign went on to say what you should do if you encounter a mountain lion. And the first thing it said you're supposed to do is to try and look as big as possible. I just don't have a lot of big working for me. And then it said you should stare the mountain lion in the eyes and back away as slowly as possible. And the third thing it said to do, it said if the mountain lion attacks, and I thought this was particularly prudent, it said if the mountain lion attacks, fight back. And then you could tell somebody's mother had written the sign because the last thing it said was, "Do not hike alone." Well, I didn't have anybody with me, so I started hiking. And also, I thought this was just some sort of anomalous case of the government giving me good advice. But I was at Mount St. Helens one time, and they were having ash plumes. I'm saying the word ASH, plumes. And so the sign said, in the event of an ash plume, go inside. If you cannot go inside, get in your car. If you can't get in your car, try not to breathe ash. So anyway, I started hiking, and I came around a curve in the path, and there, standing in the middle of the path, with his claws out and his fangs bared, was the biggest, meanest, ugliest, nastiest chipmunk that I had ever seen. But right behind him, with his claws out and his fangs bared, was the biggest, meanest, ugliest, nastiest mountain lion I had ever seen, and both of them were pretty happy to see me. Because that chipmunk knew that he wasn't going to be breakfast anymore. And that mountain lion knew that he was going to get a lot more to eat than he had been planning on. So the first thing that happened was that chipmunk shot off into the underbrush. So there I was, staring eye to eye with a hungry mountain lion. Well, I knew that I was supposed to try and look as big as possible, but that seemed counterproductive to me. So I just sort of turned sideways, sucked in my gut, and pulled up my t-shirt. I wanted that mountain lion to see my ribs. I wanted him to think that I was the breakfast equivalent of a Pop-Tart. A pre-wrapped pastry, not worth going to any trouble for, but apparently that's exactly what he was in the mood for, because he crouched down and got ready to spring. Well, it was way too late to start backing away, so I realized I was going to have to fight this mountain lion. Now, I don't know about you, but I had never fought a mountain lion before. And the only thing I could think to do is what Tarzan does in Edgar Rice Burroughs' novels when he fights lions. And what Tarzan does is he crouches down like this. And when the lion springs, Tarzan gets up under his front legs, turns him around, puts him in a full Nelson, and knocks him out. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. And I know you're probably thinking, Tarzan's a lot bigger than you, buddy. But then I figure that Africa lions are a lot bigger than California lions. So I was hoping the ratio would work out, right? Thank you very much. You're with me on this one. So I crouched down, and just before the lion sprang, I reached in my pocket, and I pulled out my stainless steel 74-function Swiss Army type knife. Now, I didn't have any time to open up any of the blades, but I had it in my hand. And when the mountain lion sprang, I got up under his front legs, I turned him around, I put him in a full Nelson, and I was doing everything I could to knock him out. But it wasn't quite working. And to be honest with you, that mountain lion was pretty angry. but he was a lot more embarrassed than he was angry. I mean, just imagine walking into your kitchen one morning and a Pop-Tart jumps up out of the toaster, puts you in a full Nelson, pile drives you into the linoleum. It didn't help matters that there was a chipmunk standing beside the path going, na 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 na. But that mountain lion was growing steadily less and less embarrassed and more angry. I was still doing everything I could to knock him out. Nothing was working. And that's when I remembered that I had been a pastor for 4 years. And I thought what I ought to do is I ought to preach to this mountain lion. Because I knew from 200 Sundays in the pulpit experience that a lot of times if you preach to somebody, one of two things will happen. You'll either save them or you'll put them to sleep. Either alternative seemed all right to me. So, just before I started my sermon, what I did was, on my pocket knife there, I opened up, it's got a couple of special blades. It's got a copy of the New Testament on it, and then it's got some vestments, because it's not just a Swiss Army knife, it's also a Salvation Army knife. I know, thank you. It's a long way to go for that joke, but I think it's worth it. So I laid into that mountain lion. I started into my sermon. I gave him some Samson. I gave him some Daniel. I was coming around the corner into Nero when I looked down and sure enough, he was sound asleep. But I still didn't know what to do with him because I was afraid if I just laid him down, he might wake right back up. But more than that, he'd only had about 5 minutes of the word. So he was in a very fragile theological condition. I was out in California. Who knew who the next person down the path was going to be? You know, it could have been a guy in black pants and a white shirt, little name tag. So I couldn't have that on my conscience. So I decided... Now, I've done that joke out here before, but never in the BYU broadcasting building. Seems like we're going to make it. So, I decided what I ought to do is I ought to baptize that mountain lion. Because again, I know from vast experience that a lot of times if you baptize somebody, you will never see them again. So I got him up on my hip and I started making my way down towards the edge of the Ventura River. I got right to the edge of the river, got ready to baptize that mountain lion. But that's when it occurred to me, I didn't know what denomination he was. Now, I'm a Methodist, so we sprinkle. But I figure anybody that got converted as quickly as that mountain lion did almost had to be a Baptist. So that meant I was going to have to go for the full bore Duncan there. And I asked my dad when I was a kid, how come Methodists just get sprinkled but Baptists get the full bore Duncan? And Dad told me that that's because Methodists just have dirty minds. But that the Baptists are dirty all over. So I got the mountain lion up on my hip, and I started making my way into the Ventura River, and I said the words you're supposed to say, and then boom. And when we came back up out of the water, that mountain lion was angrier than he had been all day. Didn't seem at all like someone who had just experienced the peace of Christ in his life. And that's when it occurred to me that mountain lions are cats, which means they have 9 lives, which probably means that they have 9 souls, which meant that I was going to have to baptize that mountain lion 8 more times. I was coming up out of the water on about the 7th turn when I looked up and I saw, standing on the bank of the river, an angelic figure. She had her back to the sun, and the sunlight was dappling through. She had long flowing hair. Sunlight was kind of dappling through, kind of a halo over her head. And then I heard a most unangelic voice that said, "Unhand that mountain lion." And she turned, I could see it was a woman, and she was wearing the uniform of a member of the California Department of Natural Resources. And she said, "Don't you know that it's illegal in the state of California to push your religion on a wild animal? And she reached in her back pocket and pulled out her wallet, and she flipped it open. It had her badge in it, and about 16 of those little plastic card-carrying cards thing had like her Vegans Anonymous card and her Herbal Tea Drinkers of America card and her People for the Non-Proliferation of Human Religions Amongst Animals card. And then all the way down at the bottom there were some ashes that I'm pretty sure were from the bra that she had burned in 1968. She said, "I want you to release that mountain lion into my protective custody at this moment." And I swear to you, that mountain lion turned and looked at me, and he said, "Don't let her protect me." So he and I worked out a quick deal. I let go of him. He went one way, I went the other way. And there's no real end to this story, except to say that if you're ever out in California and you meet a mountain lion and all else fails, you might just want to ask him if he's a Christian.
Thanks for joining us for a little story from the Appleseed.